The NHL trade deadline is now officially over. The New York Rangers made their moves, and we have already seen 2 of the 3 newest additions at the NHL level for the Rangers have appeared in a game for the team, obviously getting that nice 4-0 win there against the St. Louis Blues the other night. So in this video, we're going to take a look at kind of what this lineup could possibly look like and kind of what we saw in that St. Louis Blues game. I know we were obviously missing Jacob Trouba in that one, so the lines weren't perfect, but for the most part, at least on the forward side of things, it is somewhat of what we could potentially see going forward for the playoffs and the rest of the regular season. So starting off here with just taking a look at the exact 3 players that we did trade for at the deadline. Obviously picking up right-handed defenseman, a pretty solid depth guy in Chad Ruhwedel. Solid puck moving guy, more of a defensive defenseman than an offensive guy, but is a solid, puck mover, just not offensively. He's not going to put up a whole bunch of numbers, points and stuff like that, but he definitely can be a solid depth guy. Then you have Alex Wennberg, who is a very solid kind of two-way, more defensive center than an offensive kind of guy, but he has had a couple seasons right around 40 points the past couple years, so he's a pretty solid, offensive guy, but definitely more of a defensive center than an offensive guy, but should be able to play a great kind of third-line center role there for the Rangers, helping on the PK, being a good defensive center, being a shutdown kind of guy. Definitely was a pretty good addition, and we did see him get an assist against the Blues the other night as well. The other addition, though, the last one that we're going to talk about here is Jack Roslovic. This is a very nice pickup here for the Rangers. All 3 of these moves were fairly cheap. I thought the Rangers got some pretty good value out of these moves. Chad Ruhwedel was a bit of a higher pick than I would have loved to kind of give up, but it's still a pick in the future. It doesn't matter too much when this team is truly trying to compete for a Stanley Cup. So, guy Jack Roslovic, though, he's a very talented forward, has been a really great playmaker for the last couple of seasons, especially with the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are obviously not a great team, so he hasn't had the most success offensively, but he still had some very good seasons overall, putting up some great numbers and coming to a team like the Rangers where he's being paired with guys like Kreider and Zibanejad, who are more of the goal scorers. I definitely think adding in that winger there in Jack Roslovic could be a pretty good fit. Definitely could make a lot of sense. But taking a look at the exact lineup that we did see the other night against the St. Louis Blues, Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, and Jack Roslovic, who I think is obviously a very good player, and I think definitely could be a good fit alongside Zibanejad and Kreider. Being that good playmaker, throwing him alongside 2 good goal scorers will hopefully unlock kind of their game at 5-on-5, because they definitely can have their moments when they're not scoring a lot at 5-on-5. So adding in a playmaker there and Jack Roslovic definitely could help things out quite a bit. For the second line, we have Artemi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck, and Alexis Lafreniere. This line's not going to get touched no matter what. I can't imagine. Lafreniere has finally really taken that big step forward in his overall game. May not be that first overall pick caliber of player, but still, he's having a great season and definitely proving a lot of people wrong. Then you have, obviously, Trocheck, who's playing great this year as well. He's kind of taken even a bit of a step forward in his game as well. Although he's been great the last couple of seasons either way, he's still really playing amazing this season and kind of has, like I said, kind of taken a bit of a step up in his game as well. Then you have a guy like Panarin who's doing Panarin-type things. This is what he does. He produces offensively. He's an elite playmaker, elite overall offensive threat, and he continues to prove that year in and year out, even as he does start to get on in age. He's definitely an old player, but he's getting up there in age, and obviously he's on the wrong side of 30 there, but he's still producing at a very, very good level. Then for that third line there, this is kind of a line that I really like to see. It is Will Cooley, Alex Wennberg, and Kaapo Kakko. This is going to be our third line, really good kind of defensive line there. And especially having a guy like Wennberg and Kakko, 2 really, really solid defensive players. Then you obviously have a guy like Will Cooley on the other side of things, who may be a rookie and a little inexperienced, but still pretty solid two-way guy, can lay the body, play that physical game, obviously help it offensively as well. And having guys like Alex Wennberg and Kakko alongside Cooley, I definitely think this line could be pretty good. It's definitely, like I said, a good defensive line, a bit of checking in there as well, a bit of physicality, but you also got that a bit of scoring punch there as well. Cooley, Wennberg, and Kakko were all guys who can be pretty solid offensive threats as well. So I think this third line definitely could be very good for this Rangers team. And now taking a look at that fourth line that we saw against the Blues, and this is where things can definitely change a lot more than, for example, that top 9, where I think for the most part, bearing any injuries, this is kind of the top 9 we're going to see. I don't think we're changing around too many things on that first, second, and third line, but the fourth one, this is where things can definitely change around quite a bit. But what we saw against the Blues was Jimmy Vesey, Barclay Gaudreau, and then Matt Rempe. So I think that's definitely a solid fourth line, with Johnny Brodzinski kind of being that extra forward. I honestly think this is a pretty solid fourth line here. A guy like Brodzinski, he can fit in pretty much anywhere on this fourth line there, which is obviously nice. So I think this team, after picking up Roslovic and Wennberg, and especially on the back end of things, Ruhwedel, I do think this team has a lot more depth now, which is definitely a very, very nice thing to see. And I think we have, 4 or 5 fourth line kind of forwards that, if they have to play there, they can definitely make a pretty good impact. And obviously a guy like Edstrom, he's there as well potentially. So we'll see what happens with him. I mean, he's going to go up and down potentially a bit here and there, but we still have a lot of depth now, and I think that is definitely something to take note of, and definitely a very good thing for the Rangers going forward. And into the playoffs, you got to have that depth, and that is something that this team definitely has now. And now taking a look at the defensive lines here that we saw against the Blues, it wasn't really the lines that we're actually going to see going forward, as obviously Jacob Trouba was out. So the lines were, though, Lindgren, Fox, Miller, Schneider, and then Jones, Gustafsson, which is interesting. I mean, right now, having Jones in there is fine, but come playoff time, obviously don't really want to see him a whole lot. I mean, he is a solid player, but let's be honest, defensively, he's still not great. He doesn't bring a physical game at all. He's very small, doesn't have the experience that I would love to see for a bottom pairing D-man come playoff time when we're playing against some top tier teams who are obviously going to be very good and have that experience. Putting a guy like Jones out there is not obviously the ideal situation, so that's kind of why a guy like Ruhwedel was brought in here to be a solid puck-moving guy, but also be a bit better of a defensive guy than obviously someone like Zach Jones is. So I think it's a good pickup here, getting in Ruhwedel. He obviously didn't feature, but still a good pickup here. And the actual line I think we're probably more than likely going to see is, I would imagine, Lindgren, Foxy, Miller, Trouba, Gustafsson, Schneider, the basic kind of pairs we have seen for pretty much the entire season. With kind of Ruhwedel as that seventh D-man being worked in here as well, that definitely is a possibility. So we'll see what happens. Injuries can definitely factor into things as well. But right now, Lindgren, Foxy, Miller, Trouba, Gustafsson, and Schneider is kind of what I'm guessing, with Ruhwedel as that seventh D-man and Jones as that eighth. Definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, like I said, Jones just isn't quite good enough, I don't think, to be at a level to play on this team come playoff time. I mean, I think he's a fine D-man and a decent prospect, but he is getting up there in age more, and obviously he hasn't been playing a lot this season because he can't get sent down because he's waiver eligible, so that definitely makes things a little more tricky with obviously Zach Jones being on the team there. But like I said, I think that's kind of why we brought in Ruhwedel here, so we don't really have to see a guy like Zach Jones come playoff time play a whole lot. I think Ruhwedel is just kind of a better player right now. I mean, defensively, he's definitely a lot more sound, has a lot more experience in the playoffs as well, and definitely is a pretty solid puck mover. And like I said, I think these three guys who will be added in are pretty solid. I mean, they're not top-tier talents. It's not a Jake Gensel here. It's not an Alex Tuck. These not true kind of top-line talents, but a guy like Jack Roslovic has some good offensive skill here. He's a very talented player, good playmaker, has had multiple 40-plus point seasons. He's a good playmaker, good offensive talent, and definitely could be a pretty good fit alongside two good goal scorers in Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. Then Alex Wennberg going in that third line there. I think he's going to be a really solid kind of third line, shutdown defensive center. Can help out in the PK here as well, and he's definitely not the best faceoff guy, but still a pretty solid center. Can help out offensively and really do a good job defensively as well for this team, and be on a pretty solid line there with two young guys who are also that kind of really good kind of third line, pretty solid defensive guys as well. This definitely could be a pretty good defensive third line there. And then you have, on the defensive side of things, they're adding in Ruhwedel. I think this is a pretty solid depth move here. Again, not a top four guy, not a really solid, talented player, but a guy who can move the puck a bit, have experience in the playoffs. He has 25 games played there at the Penguins. He's won a Stanley Cup with them as well. He's been around the league for a bit now. He's got some experience. This is a guy who is going to be a bit better than Zach Jones. Not going to be a elite guy, but he definitely is an upgrade over a guy like Zach Jones, in my opinion. Anyways, though, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please smash the like button. And don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on these lines, as well as don't forget to subscribe for daily New York Rangers content.